Hmm. What's up, guys? Who's the next dictator to get kidnapped? I don't know. Dictator or, democratically elected official? Who's to say? Your mineral intake seems to have improved. I don't know what that means. Good weekend for to overthrow a dictator? That's one way of putting it. Yeah, I mean, I guess we can talk about it a little bit. I'm guessing trade war escalation back on the table. Well, China does have the right to do that. Although China was already prepared to escalate the trade war, I think, um, prior prior to Trump um initiating the raid in Venezuela. Good afternoon. I've just been working on some stuff for Pickles Picks and reading some research reports and figured I'd pop out and get the weekend stream out of the way. Ah, fuck. I need more caffeine today. So, I guess I'm doing good. How are you? My money's on Scheinbaum. Yeah, I mean, it's an extrajudicial extraction with no extradition of a foreign national, without the approval of Congress. Um, now, I mean, I guess the question here is, will and can the United States just charge literally anybody with any crime they make up, indict them through our kind of questionable Department of Justice, and then extradite them to the United States vis-a-vis our military power? And if we're going to do that, are we going to continue to do it in oil-rich countries? Next up on the list is Nigeria. Um, China. I mean, she made some concessions to Trump, even though he does not have to. I want to be very clear that China holds all of the cards in any trade negotiations. The only thing the Americans can cut off is access to their consumers, and if we do that, we lose a significant amount of our production capacity, which would hurl us into a recession. And so China still controls all of the rare earth minerals. They have now fairly significant stockpiles of gold and silver alongside Russia, who's one of the world's largest gold producers and has also been accumulating silver in their central banks. And they are now importing export controls on physical silver. I would imagine next would be export controls on physical gold. And then I would imagine China can then clamp down on rare earth minerals again, effectively killing the chip industry. China needed to bide some time, obviously, in order to continue to accumulate physical supply of those precious metals. But I would say that they probably have sufficient stockpiles of both between Russia and China, and now we're attacking BRICS countries without congressional approval, and what is absolutely an act of war. We have stolen their leader. Now, whether he's a bad guy or not, that's kind of irrelevant as far as international law is concerned. Putin's a bad guy, but we don't, see a Delta team fucking raiding the Kremlin and pulling Putin out of there, do you? Also, probably something Trump hasn't considered is he opens up the right for every other country in the world to start doing this to other world leaders. That means, Putin could go in and grab Zelensky, or Zelensky could go grab Putin. And this creates quite a international legal problem that is most likely self-escalating. But the things we need to worry about as traders right now is how is this going to affect confidence in U.S. bonds? He's saying if you're not willing to support the dollar effectively, we might just jail you. So that could be good for yields and strengthening for the dollar. It could have the opposite effect in that other countries um, bail on the dollar or sanctions are placed against the United States for their illegal actions. And so obviously futures open here in about 40 minutes is going to be very important. But this has sweeping effects on both, commodities, and we don't have access to their oil yet. So no, it's probably not going to drive the price of oil down significantly. Um, and gold. Obviously, geopolitical risk by itself is going to have some impact on gold, impact on volatility. How are other BRICS nations like China, who are so integral to the chip trade that currently supports the SPX or the S&P 500, well, all of the American market is pretty much supported by AI right now. So, if we lose access to the materials required to create those chips, that's very, very bearish. I mean, the Mag 7 alone are like 40% of the S&P, and they're all absolutely reliant on chips. So, it's a pretty interesting to see what's going to happen. Carvana's spicy, don't you think? My bias is up. This someone is trying to save Carvana. Probably the people they owe money to. But I don't really. Is Carvana spicy? I mean, it bounced a little Friday. I would say it's well overdue for a bit of a relief rally. But we can take a look at the chain. It slipped right through gamma neutral Friday. Found a little bit of support after the gap fill down into 390. Um, Delta didn't pick up, but total gamma exposure. So it stayed just a tiny bit positive. Hmm. There's some decent support at 400. Room to push back to the upside to like 425, 435. Yeah, 400's a big pinch point. Below that, 380. Been seeing skew 10 turn around a bit. There's some there's definitely some incentive to sell the put premium on all of these on the 10-day window at a minimum. I wouldn't be surprised. It looks like there's some uptick in interest at like the 450 strike. Vol's kind of flattening around 400 out to 440. But under 400 it picks back up again. Not very steeply, mind you. So I would say yeah, there's probably some upside interest there. The drop off in gamma kind of flattens out under 400, which makes this like a prime selling point. There's even like a little uptick in gamma exposure right here between like 385 and 390 that we might be we might see on like shorter expirations on the put side. Yeah. So we're probably seeing some puts being sold down here at 85.80. These are all very short dated. This is the weekly. This is next week on the OPEX. This is this week and next week. So yeah, I would say we're probably seeing some put sellers come in and try to take advantage of that elevated, very, very elevated put premium. And we could probably see like a little bit of a relief rally. It will be hard to get out to like 410 for buyers. But above that, you know, there's probably enough supportive gamma to push out a little bit higher. So I would expect some kind of turnaround, or at least a small bounce. This was also like the high back in like October. It was the high right before price took off on like beginning of December. Um, so it's a fairly important technical level as well. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we see some vol shorts move in and on the put side, and we see some IV pick back up on the calls. Maybe more than we're seeing here, but right now, I mean, yeah, a lot of buyers out at 450, 490. IV is going to start to turn around also. Event vol into earnings out in March, but there's a little bit of time for that. Feb, baby. There's one. Some point in Feb 19. So yeah, like out here where IV picks up the most. So this might be where we see some dispersion trading. $385, 400. There's not a lot of squeeze potential because there's not a lot of upside delta. So it's not super squeezy. It's kind of flat, actually. But I mean, yeah, it can push out to like 20 or 50 from where it is now, depending on what interest comes in. Anyway, that's Carvana covered. What else? I'll have to watch later tonight. I got it at 150, but I don't like what the neutrals are doing on Baba. Oh. Hmm. Interesting. That's possibly really bullish. What the fuck changed there? Hmm. So somebody moved out of like a bunch of elite positioning early, but total delta went up and was buying. And this is bullish. It's just bullish out to a very narrow range, right? It's gamma max. The thing the neutrals are doing is not bearish. $60. Yeah, hard to move to the upside. Definitely a big shift in positioning on the chain though, with the last like 3 days. Why would Upstart be bullish? I mean, you do know that there's no like actual reason for Upstart to be bullish, and you've said this like 15 times in the last like 3 months, and I keep telling you the same thing. Check out a heat map, maybe rolled leaps. Oh, possibly. Uh, Well, Fridays wouldn't update, but it does look like there's a huge amount of out of the money calls falling off and in the money calls opening, which could be hedging the downside. There's a big pile of calls out here. The put side, it's like out of the money puts like 147 picked up pretty substantially over the last two sessions. There's some down at like 140. It's kind of, I mean, it kind of looks bearish. There's not a lot of room to the upside, is the problem I have. But generally, like, gamma and delta falling off like that's pretty bullish. Or at least indicative of a lot of repositioning. I don't know if there's anywhere else in Baba's history where we can find any good, like, evidence of delta falling that sharply. But this drop in delta neutral and pinch from gamma max, that's usually kind of bullish. I'm just and obviously options shifted more bought, but this is because options fell off the chain, not because of repositioning. This is just like, people rolled their shit out or closed in the money calls, something like that. Bob is kind of illiquid right now too. Only 5 billion delta on it. Yeah, almost 6, but still low. Ooh, let me check the vol. Yeah, Ivy picked up a little bit to the upside. Yeah, see, this is like those puts like bought on the OPEX expiration out here on the leap. Like it looks like there's some bot calls like 165. Actually, those might be puts too. But those like the 125, 130, those puts don't look sold down here. These, yeah, these are being picked up. There's not a lot of them. These are definitely being bought. There's more OI at the 140 strike. That jumped quite a bit. 1,000 contracts at 147. 1,300 at 145. Mostly call OI picking up on 150 though. Hmm. Yeah, I mean, it looks kind of bullish out to 60. Just above 60. It doesn't really look that great. I don't know. We're gonna see what happens when the market opens. I feel like some of this could be pretty bad. Like we're not just immediately gaining access to their oil. Exxon went and spent like a shitload of money developing oil fields and distribution networks for Venezuelan oil back before Maduro, and all of that has just gone to shit. So all of it's going to need to be probably rebuilt. And then Venezuelan oil's dirty, so it's not easy to refine. The U.S. isn't well set up to refine Venezuelan oil. Or just pretend everything's normal. Maybe. It's definitely not. I mean, it's a big deal. I thought it was to stop drug trafficking. No, it's not. Trump even said it was for the oil. Like 5 or 6 times. Why the fuck would we go invade another country because of drug trafficking? That's the stupidest shit I've ever heard. You mean in the Gulf of America? That's still not going to plow through 308 billion barrels in reserves. I think there's one in Galveston. Maybe Beaumont. But most of those are set up to handle like Canadian oil, not and oil out of the Gulf of Mexico. It's gonna take billions and billions. Sorry, Gulf of America. Whoops. Don't worry, NSA guy. This could draw a lot of international scrutiny. I mean, China and Russia are definitely both going to press vis-a-vis the UN, and obviously are in a position to sanction the US rightfully. Yeah, I think Venezuelan oil requires significantly more coking capacity, if I remember. It is Venezuelan oil isn't just like heavy crude, it's like extra, it's extra rough. It's very likely that near term prices on oil are still going to just be driven by like OPEC policy, Russian exports, and global demand, and not like what's going on in Venezuela currently. Over time, obviously, as that oil starts to hit the market, yes, but I think Canadian producers are going to lose out. Like Suncor or Cenovus, Imperial Oil. Maybe some pipeline people like Kinder Morgan. Yeah, I feel like those will be the largest beneficiaries in the short term. Will be like Kinder Morgan, NOV, Halliburton, Schlumberger. Anybody who's going to get those sweet, sweet fucking government contracts to spend probably hundreds of billions of dollars rebuilding Venezuela's oil infrastructure. And I'm pretty sure the Venezuelan government still owes ExxonMobil a metric fuck ton of money from the first time they did it and then let it go to shit. Strategically, what countries would the US realistically look to imperialize? Assuming this whole thing was to weaken China's position in the trade war. I mean, it doesn't significantly weaken China's position because China still refines like 90% of the world's rare earth minerals. There's no weakening that position in the next 10 years. Um, if we want to try to take over the global oil trade, Venezuela and then Nigeria, those are the big two. That would probably give the US about 50% of global oil reserves between the two of them, almost 50%. I guess we could go after Russia. That would do some damage. But I think this is part of a broader campaign to imperialize America, right? He's trying to use the like Monroe Doctrine as a which is something sort of like what Teddy Roosevelt did, as a license to unilaterally control the Western Hemisphere. And uh, I mean, the problem with it is obviously the Monroe Doctrine is not a fucking law. It's a foreign policy. It's not enforceable in international court in any way at all. And it's dated, and its intention was not to be used to invade countries. It was to keep Europe from colonizing in the Americas. And so anyway, I would imagine that the long term goal is to get a base in Venezuela, use that to go after Colombia and Brazil, of which the administration is not particularly fond. That opens up a route to Panama from the south, and then you can attack Mexico from the north, take over Mexico, and then pinch point Panama and cut off China's west to east trade routes. If I really wanted to go full tinfoil hat, I would say that's where we're headed. It's like Trump's little blitzkrieg. That's very cute. It will, however, absolutely fucking start a World War III. Because every other nuclear power in the world will also have to start a policy of imperialization and have to go after every other country that does not have access to nuclear arms. Because we can't go after each other, right? Mutually assured self destruction, but we can go after everyone who doesn't have nukes. Then, if we can use Israel to close, if we could potentially use Israel to close the Suez Canal, then we can cut off all of China's trade outside of Oceania in Southeast Asia. That would make the most sense. Then China has to get oil supply either from Russia or from the Saudis. We can pressure the Saudis through Iran. Probably really aren't going to stop the flow of oil from Russia to China, though. I mean, I don't think there's very many countries in the world that the US cannot take over in a matter of hours. Effectively take over in a matter of hours. We don't do that, right? Because it's a really bad look, but um got all that big military. What the fuck would you want to take over Iran? They don't even have water. Iran's a big country. You got to deal with dirty bombs and terrorism. It's a big pain in the ass. Why not just take over developing economies where there's literally nothing they can do? I will say, though, every puppet leader that the U.S. has tried to install following a U.S.-led regime change has not been successful, at least not since World War II. So Germany, Japan, Italy, those worked out, but all of our attempts at regime change in South America have failed horribly. I mean, the real answer to that, as disgusting as it may be, is that the U.S. just takes sovereign control of the country. And then that gives Trump a lovely extrajudicial place to set up his internment camps. Dying empire thesis becoming truer every day. Well, I mean, that's where we're at. Have you heard about Quebec and Alberta's push to separate from Canada? If they do separate, what are the chances they choose to become U.S. territories? I mean, no, I haven't. I don't pay attention to Canadian policies, but unlikely. Um, Quebec is French. I mean, yeah, actually, Canada's kind of the one part of North America that Trump, or the Americas, that Trump really can't fuck with because of the French in the UK. They also have nukes. So think of the countries that have nukes. Okay. Think of the territories they control. Those are off limits. Everything else is pretty fair game. And I did say Trump would invade South America several times now. And Trump's already tabled what? Cuba, Mexico, and Colombia. We got to go after Brazil at some point, right? Because they fucking put their dictator in jail. That's not a good look. You can't have people thinking you can do that. I don't think the route to secession is as quite as easy as you're implying. At a certain point, it's just going to be, why not take the whole continent? Yeah, well, I'm a bit concerned about us taking over these developing nations' debt. Well, we haven't officially done that, but yeah, that would be a big problem. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I think some of this is being done in an effort to stabilize the dollar and long-term yields before inflation ticks up and they start to explode. Also, if we can keep the cost of oil down, it'll keep inflation pressured to the downside at least. There are like real economic reasons for the US to do this right now. The fact that we're not instating the rightful leader of Venezuela, or at least haven't supported them, is probably a worrying signal. Guess we're cursed with living in interesting times. Anyway, Upstart sucks. I don't know. Fucking, you're gonna play. You can play the bounce off of the distributive price action off of 50. Again, stock's not bullish unless it gets above 50, and it failed to break out of its downtrend, which is not a good look. Ew. Neo? Mm. Neo looks a little bit bullish still. People are fighting for the 5-6, but there's a lot of vol sellers. Yeah, vol's like flat to the upside. Starting to pick up at 4. 30-day skews steepening a bit. So bullish short term, bearish longer term. If it slips under $5, gamma falls off fast, back down to like $3. It looks like all of the support is at 5. Not much delta to the upside. So what's there to play out here? 550? Doesn't seem worth it. I can see it retreating back to the 4 support. Might fall further. It's a Chinese company. Any escalation in the trade war is going to be probably really bad for them. Back in April, stock fell back to like $3. We're in trouble. We have the option of showing our power to other nations to fix things for ourselves. With China, not so much. However, they could try. Do you think the economic situation and the pressure from the US will corner China into staging an invasion of their own? I mean, China has free reign to go after Taiwan now. All they've done is take out Maduro. Yeah, I mean, Venezuela still has a standing army. You are correct. We have not done much. But I do think, I do think China is probably going to continue to move forward with trade restrictions. They can now, and we're directly attacking BRICS, right? So Russia and China are both highly incentivized to sanction the US. It's not gonna be, no, it's gonna be an ongoing thing. I would honestly, if I were Trump, maybe I shouldn't give him any ideas. Will they weigh the risk of going after Taiwan against the presence of U.S. and Indian navies in the area, or do they just go for it? I mean, internet, like, we support a unified China in the U.S., as does India. Um, so I mean, if they go after Taiwan, we're going to blow up TSMC, and Intel's going to go to the moon. Nvidia will also go to like $4. No, that's excessive. 40? The value of their cash holdings. Is it too late to buy long-term puts? Probably not. I think the current situation is still confusing enough that we're unlikely to fall off the face of the planet. The big risk going into market open here in a few minutes is going to be people dumping U.S. Treasuries, especially China, and spiking yields at the top end of the curve, and that could obviously drive equities down very hard. 8 hours after leaving Venezuela, Maduro was apprehended. Yeah, and I'm aware. So if anything happens to Taiwan, our entire equity market's probably going to collapse. I mean, it's more advantageous for India to choose China, Russia over us, simply geographically. We are a major trade partner, but we've also imposed tariffs on them and interfered with their desire to take over Pakistan. No, I mean you could probably still go on vacation in Venezuela. I'm gonna buy some Venezuelan property, something on the beach. I don't know. It's very cheap. Yeah, Japan wants nukes, so nuclearization of Japan changes the dynamics in the whole region. I think the estimate right now is they could have them in about 7 years. Although I'd be surprised if it wasn't much sooner. Trade is very asymmetric, but yeah, but still BRICS. This is like, I mean, Trump is making this BRICS versus the U.S. So if India's going to choose a side, or they already have, Fute's up. Yeah, I mean the opening candle doesn't mean a lot, but it's barely. A lot of shorted stocks look primed to run into Leapex. Well, this is yeah, I mean this is like the big equity dispersion week. So, I mean generally speaking, like the majority of equity options are expiring on Friday, or well, next Friday on the 16th. Sorry, this isn't Leapex, but so in 2 weeks, the majority of equity options are expiring, which means that the volatility on those options is going to start climbing. Um, I would say generally speaking, this period this period can be bullish, but it can also be like you end up with like a lot of people bailing on in the money leaps, either via exercise or just closing them out. So you can get a lot of weird shit like you see on Baba, where like Delta's Delta's climbing, but everything like all of the dealer positioning is shifting down like $20 from spot because people are closing in the money positions. Okay, you do know that Russia and China have stockpiled a metric fuck ton of silver and gold vis-a-vis their central banks and the populace. They're also the world's largest, some of the world's largest suppliers of silver and gold. And China still holds, a fairly significant amount of US treasuries. So theoretically, if China and Russia were to symmetrically, eh, um, hmm, impose trade restrictions on physical precious metals, they could crush the dollar. There's an awful lot of sensitivity to the carry trade also in silver, which I've been watching, and it's kind of interesting. Like, oops. Boom, boom, boom. Look at this. Like where silver squeezes, the P&L on the carry trade gets hit really hard. And it pushes up the cumulative carry costs for leverage against USD JPY. I made those. I'm pretty sure my math is right, but it's not a very robust tool. But it does give you a visualization of what's happening. I mean, Brazil's not much better than Russia. And what is Russia? I mean, if Russia's got a massive fuck ton of silver and gold, what do they need? What do they need bonds for? Yeah, but they'll push US yields. That's the point. That's how they crush the dollar, right? They push US yields way the fuck up. And that'll push their yields down. They're also fairly free to open up more obvious trading internationally. I mean, I don't actually think it's a great way to get leverage on China for rare earth minerals. I think it's very likely China will just cut off rare earth minerals because we went after Venezuela. And Japan doesn't even really have like a military, so Japan having their backs like really not that relevant. You look at Rivian. I'm trying to sell some covered calls. I think I looked at this like the other day for someone, and you might have missed the opportunity last weekend, but I don't know. Delta's still kind of falling off. The bounce from the low got rejected, so maybe it's gonna start continuing to decline. Um, I don't think this looked very good, and I'm not really sure what the fucking case is for it to be at $20 a share right now. So yeah, I mean, there's some really nothing stopping a move back down to like 17 or 15. Depends on how far out you're looking. Gamma's somewhat stable here, but falls off fast to the downside. Is it worth it? Oh, shit. I don't know if it's actually worth it to sell them. Yeah, there's not a lot of... Premiums aren't very good relative to historic vol. People might be selling like the 19 call. Fall surface looks like a cluster flag. I mean, if you assume that HV is going to continue to decline, then 10-30 days might be okay. The 60 day is a little bit more stable. Big chunk of the open interest at 15 falls off on OPEX. 17, not so much. Most of the interest at 19 for OPEX also. Yeah, I mean, also on a technical side, like 1760, 1574 are both fairly important levels below spot. If this stabilizes, like Gamma Max coming down is kind of bullish. But I'd probably want to see more stability on the like 19, maybe the 20 strike. But out above Gamma Max in the short term is probably not bad. Are there any other tickers? Did I miss anything? A urine for SLS? SLS? I don't have any data on it. Why Intel? Intel's like a Gamma, fairly close to Gamma Max. Gamma Max is rising. Delta's picking up. Looks pretty bullish. Grindier upside, but definitely bullish to the upside. 40's big resistance. Breakout above 40 can continue out to like 45 or 50. I wouldn't imagine that price improvement would be very quick, but it looks bullish on the 10, 30, 60, and 90 day. Um, I mm, looks like, yeah, like the 30 day window looks the most advantageous there. Mm, or the 60. $90 IV is relatively cheap. So some incentive to go long gamma on the 90. IV's at 53, HV's at 62. Although, I'd probably wait to enter on a pullback. I don't know if I'd want to go long here. LAC. No data. SMCI. Hmm. Gamma neutral and max are both like the. I missed this. Or delta neutral and gamma max are at the same price. That's weird. There's some interest out at 32.50. Looks like most of the shit to the upside's spot puts. It's pulling back. It's a little pricey. Some interesting stuff had happened above 32, but I would say it's probably very hard to get out there. If it got out to 38, I would go long. Actually, you know what? I'd probably go long if it broke 32 because the out of the money interest would probably pick up substantially. But this is a risky entry here. Damn, that is strange. Yeah, like things are like a bit more bullish Friday, but not substantially. I don't see it. Oh, there it is. I had to refresh. Ew, this options chain is fucked. Yeah, I mean, it's just got like 6 strikes. Not even. Probably like 3 that matter. What do you want to know about it? This is why we don't add your guys' shit tickers. It's probably gonna crash. There's plenty of vol to sell. Yeah, there's not much improvements in volatility to the upside. I mean, at most, what, it hits 5 in the short term. Even if it did, it probably wouldn't last very long. Under 4 gets bearish pretty quick. Almost everything on it's just calls, so just puts back at $3. EK is at a delta to the upside. Ooh, interesting. Yeah. It's got a little at 120 and 125. So not out of. But, also another really thin chain. I don't know if this needs to come down in any meaningful way. There's been some profit taking in the money. Maybe a little bit bearish. It does look like the 125 calls are getting sold, so I guess you don't have to worry much about those. The 120s, though, would bother me a bit. I probably wouldn't short this without it failing like 115. But it could be a good opportunity for like spreads. June calls for 50 on what? On Intel? Rocket Lab. It's pushing back up. I mean, it's a bullish breakout. Might get out back above gamma neutral here, or gamma max. It's got some room to the upside, like 85, 86. And it starts to get a little wonky. Delta's picking up, but it was mostly on the weekly shit. Ooh, I don't like the move in skew 30. That's not a good sign. Historic vol flattened out on the 10 and the 30. You're going to start to get a lot of vol sellers on this. If they're already not making a bunch of money, they're going to start making a bunch of money. So I'd be a little bit cautious. There's room for it to continue up a bit. But if it does, it probably won't last very long. And at this point, I'd lean more towards trying to short a high. Like, if it got out to 85, I'd want to short it, but that doesn't mean I necessarily want to go long at it on 77, if that makes any sense. Rigetti? Jesus. Isn't this the fucking, like, quantum computing company? All the fucking delta and gamma's off the chain. I wouldn't even play this shit. It looks boring. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I know. Rigetti looks boring. It looks like it like squeezed up on the quantum news and now it looks like dog shit. Ionic? I mean, there's buyers here. There have been all along. I would say it's accumulating, but I don't think that's any indication of it breaking out. It's tested GN like a bunch of times, and the last test didn't even lead to a bounce. Like, this is barely a fucking bounce. And Delta's fallen off throughout that whole period. Gamma's still pretty flat, but there's not much gamma under spot to drive any upside, or at least support any upside. Positioning at the money is really slim. This is more likely to fall. There's big resistance at 48 relative to the positioning at spot. And the path down to 40 is a lot easier than the path up to 50. There's also, like, alright, if it breaks, like, 48, it could maybe squeeze up, but yeah, I feel like 48 would be the signal there. It closed at what, 46.77 on Friday? So, even though it closed at the high of the day, it's not a great look. And that's off of, consecutive lower highs. I would say this probably gets a new low before it gets a new local high. How do you use Ivy 1030? So, the Ivy 1030 is like our 1 day bucket, right? Or our front bucket. So that's where we're looking at the options pricing on the 10 and the 30-day window. And this is the way this is designed. We have, 10, 30, 60, 90. And this is divisible into 3 comparative buckets. So you can go 10-30, you can go 30-60, and you can go 60-90. And this is like front, mid, back. And this gives you an idea of this. Oh, really? Motherfucker. Hold on. Piece of shit, Epic Pen. There. So that gives you an idea of the front, mid, and back pricing on the options chain. Generally speaking, trading, I'm rarely ever focused on the back. So usually I'm looking at like the front bucket, which is the 10-30, or the back, which is the 30-60. And this is only really for like swing trades or long-term positioning. And only if there's some sort of pricing advantage. And what you're looking for is you're looking for advantages in pricing. So, I mean, the first thing you have is like is 10-day IV relative to 30-day IV, right? And then you have 10-day HV relative to 30-day HV. And then you have 10-day skew relative to skew 30. And this tells you a lot about how options are being priced over the window, right? So sometimes, like 10-day, like 30-day skew will stay a little steeper while 10-day rises, and that's like, people are fairly comfortable in the front end, but they're pricing up options on the back end. And so this is kind of like the back of the bucket is like puts or bid up, so people are buying downside protection further out, but the 10-day skew is fairly stable, so people are confident that price is going to remain relatively neutral over the front 10 days, but they're a little scared 30 days out. You see that on the SPX right now. Sometimes you'll see that going into earnings or something where like front IV is overpriced relative to back end IV. And then these are, things that you can take advantage of, right? So if, IV 10 is high relative to historic vol, this tells you that options are overpriced relative to their prior performance over the same period. So options 10 DTE are overpriced. Which can lead to some interesting positioning, right? Like you can sell those options because the premium, the VRP, this is VRP, volatility return premium, is positive. So this is when volatility return premium, which is the spread between IV and HV, is positive. That means selling options is beneficial. What do you mean the screen's only showing TV? No, it's not. Are you like fucking rewound or something? I'm looking at it right now. It's got Gamma Strike in the background and then writing all over it. Oh, okay. So this advantages sell side. And also financing positions. So say you have this setup where, skew's kind of flat on the 10-day. Skew's kind of steep on the 30. And then IV10 is over HV10. But HV30 is greater than IV30. You can sell the short-term put, sell the 10-day bucket, buy the 30-day put very cheap, and then if the danger out here is realized, that put will print and you paid very little premium for it because you sold an overpriced option to pay for it. Does that make sense? Skew tells us about how people are hedging. It tells you about where demand is for volatility relative to spot. So it tells you where options are kind of like pricing up, basically. So if skew's getting steeper, then puts are getting more expensive, right? There's more demand on the put side. If skew's flattening, then there's more demand on the call side, which means the price of those options is rising or falling. Why don't you say front bucket again? I mean, I do suggest that if you wanna use those tools more effectively, because I could do this for hours. If you want to use these tools more effectively, read the docs cover like where it covers volatility, skew, historic vol, all of that, right? And then try to get an idea, like think about all you've learned from fully, because I know each and every one of you have fully read options as a strategic investment. Think about what kind of positioning is benefited by different volatility regimes. Because you have, in the front bucket, you have 6 variables. You have IV, HV, and skew, 10 and 30, right? You can have backwardation or contango on the IV. You can have backwardation or contango on the HV, and then you're using skew to give you a relative idea of where demand is. And then between those 6 variables, you can construct positioning that is, and I go over this every night in Pickles Picks, and I don't expect most of you to have any fucking clue what I'm talking about. But the reason I go over it every night is because I think over time you guys will start to familiarize yourselves more with the importance of that options pricing. And if you did understand the volatility write ups I do every night, it would tell you a lot about why I'm always so right. RDW? Yeah, we can take a look at it. It's running out of delta. I don't know. I mean, like, what are you gonna do? Go long here? That seems kind of ridiculous. This is probably gonna collapse like it did the other times. But maybe higher high. It's still got a little room to run. 11 bucks, 10 or 11 bucks. 11.50 would be real tough. But if there's enough like Vana at 10, yeah, I could support a move out further to the upside. I think probably anything higher than 10 is likely to fail really, really quick. But it could push out to 10 or slightly above 10. I thought this was brilliant. Cool. Well, I mean, I got it across to you, but there's going to be a lot of other people that are confused. How many does it take to contango? Two curves. And they cost the same as puts. Yes. If you look at ASTS, why? Because you want to short it when SpaceX IPOs. Well, SpaceX is the better investment of the two, right? Or well, I don't know. Actually, is Elon's like bullshit internet part of SpaceX? That's a good question. Is Starlink? Okay, it is. It's wholly owned by SpaceX. So yeah, SpaceX would just be the better investment of these two, or at least the more stable one. So I would say that the price of the stock is very likely to collapse a bit on flight to safety or relative flight to safety. I don't think SpaceX is a better investment, but I don't know. Are they splitting Starlink and SpaceX? Right now, I mean, if SpaceX IPOs currently, the only way to invest in Starlink would be to invest in SpaceX. Nice. And who assigned that valuation to it? I mean, it's going to do the same thing all fucking IPOs do, right? It's going to rocket, then everybody who is in it is going to sell, and then it's going to dump, and then it'll do whatever it does. Right, because that's how every major IPO goes. Verbal explanation helped a lot. Good. I'm glad it did. Higher. Trying to play the upside on RDW is kind of stupid at this point. It can get a little bit more upside, but it probably won't last very long. Wolf CoreWeave MSTR. I don't like using CoreWeave's option or MSTR's option chain as any indication. Wolf looks kind of interesting. It's picking up a little bit of delta. Yeah. Spot was 1883. Why isn't spot showing up on here? Weird. Oh, because it's in here. So it's just. The whole options chain is mostly sold puts, and they're way below spot. Positive charm from all of that. This is fucky. Something's wrong with the chain on this. $22.50. Resistance at 20 and 22.50 to the upside. But yeah, something's wrong. Make a note of that. Did they split or something? Maybe they split and we didn't log it. Or relisted as a new ticker. Mm. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how much of that's reliable, but the OI data should be. Hmm. Yeah, maybe it's got a little upside room. 2022. I'm not sure. Something's wrong. with the options pricing there. Can you look at ONDS? Oh god, not again. Picked up some delta, but calls are getting more sold. It's probably getting close to topping out. I guess there's like some room up to like 12 or 13, but I don't know how much demand is out there. Yeah, there's some delta up at 12. It can push up a little more. There's definitely some call sellers stepping in though. Probably at the 12 strike. They might start to come in at the 11 too. Yeah, I think these calls are getting sold out here. These longer dated ones are probably sold too. 13, 14, 15. This might even be similar positioning. Um, yeah, quite a lot of in the money puts. Some puts at 10. Tree's starting to fall. Yeah, I would say if Ivy 30 goes over, Ivy 10 goes over 30, it's probably a good call selling opportunity. I don't know if I would pick up puts unless it failed 10, but you could buy like could be an opportunity to buy like in the money puts or deeper in the money puts. It looks like everyone else is. 1170 is the prior technical high. It's a good cup and handle setup, but you'd expect us to retest like 1150 and fail back towards like $7 before moving up. Those are really unreliable as a technical signal, but if you get the handle part, it could be worth a long entry. Happy New Year. Hope you spent some nice time with the fam. Does ANF have any more room to run? Mm, I have no idea. I don't have data for it. Um, it looks like it's failing. Caught a little bit of support at 121, but I would say a failure back under 120 is probably bearish. I already looked at ASTS. Coin. Coin looks kind of bullish. At least it's a bullish bounce. I mean, it's got to get back out above delta neutral. So it needs to move up a little. Spot. Spot at Friday's close was. What is that? 236. Um, but it looks bullish. It's a bullish bounce. Maybe the better long confirms above 240 if it gets some positive delta and under spot and a little bit more gamma. Gold's pushing up. Yields at the top end of the curve are moving. Speaking of IPOs that dumped, am I looking at Bull? Yeah, we could take a look. This might be starting to stabilize a bit. I'm getting some slightly more confident put sellers at 758. Probably longer term. Yeah. I don't know if it's going to do much before OPEX, though. Skew 10's got a long way to go. People are selling calls on it pretty heavy. The 750 put's getting sold, though. Across most expirations, so people seem to be at least somewhat confident that that's the low. There's still no negative gamma on the chain. Although this chain will probably normalize with the leap expiration. There's still room to about 15 to the upside. Yeah, the 750 and 8 puts are getting sold pretty hard. That's big OI. That's actually like pretty big OI. And the $8 call is getting bought. But on the weekly, out here, most of the call buying on like the March 10 or the Jan 2028 $15 strike is pretty popular. Calls on the leap are falling off. Little bullish. It doesn't look terrible. But not in the short term. I probably wouldn't go long in the short term, at least. Already did SMCI. Wish it could have looked bearish. I mean, relief rally, right? Like, coins overdue for one. Do you have any opinions on the Fubo convertible note holder Mudrick possibly tendering their notes and possible delta hedging short closure this week? No. I mean, I guess see if they do. If they do, I mean, Fubo looks like it's starting to stabilize around this price. Could be a good opportunity for put selling. I still don't know if I'd want to sell puts on Fubo at $3. Um, I'd be okay like selling the 250 put. Although I'd rather sell that put in the money and deeper in the money than it is now. How does Cat look? Over fucking priced. And Cat's just making a ton of money financing shit to generators and shit to data centers, but I mean, strong bounce off gamma neutral. Looks like Delta picked up, broke above the prior shoulder. Could be a little weakness around the 600 test. I'm sure there's a ton of positioning there. You guys remember when we were buying Cat for 164? Jesus. Yeah, 600's some pretty big resistance. There's room for the price to move up to 620, but it'll be tough. The 600's probably gonna get sold. It is being bought in the short term, but I think actually even here it looks like options are still fairly heavily sold. On the leap expiry, there's a little bit more demand around like 660 and a little bit more demand above 620. Ivy falls off to the upside. Which is gonna drive. I mean, you're already getting some sellers on the 30-day vol, which has a lot of premium. It's like the VRP is like 11 here. The 10-day is not as advantageous, and that's probably where you're seeing a little bit more risk on in the short term. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'd want to go long there. 35's kind of where Gamma tops out. This is going to probably collapse with the OPEX expiration. Yeah, this one's a little dangerous. There is upside room, but maybe like confirm a break over 600 and then like target 615 or 620. The prior high, 625. No, we'll record Vol Stars later tonight. Anyway, I think I'm about done. So, thank you guys for tuning in. I hope I covered everything you needed me to. And I will see you tomorrow morning. I'll have Pickles picks out tonight. I'll cover the rest. And I'll catch you guys later. Peace.